días. Muchísimas gracias por acompañarnos esta mañana.
Very well. Good morning. Thank you so very much for accompanying us this morning. Paula, Gonzalez, Herman, Bern Jr. The truth is, it's a great opportunity because we have heard very interesting voices yesterday and this morning today, and now we have the opportunity of having two owners, investors of this industry. In the case of Paula, yes, she's been in the industry for about 20 years, that is correct, with properties in Argentina, properties in the US. But in Argentina, and I would say that for the region, one of the emblematic hotels, is that right? Yes, it is so. And talking about the Hilton Buenos Aires, a property which, when events were en masse, that was the center in Argentina and part of the region. And in Herman's case, well, long-time player as well, with what, 2,000 rooms? Yes, 9 hotels, 2,000 rooms, several brands. We work with IHG, we will work with Marriott, and now with Hyatt, Dreams Playa Bonita. So these are two important real players. They are the investors, owners. And I won't talk about managers or speak about myself because I've always been a manager, right? Whereas the owner investor is the one who takes the risk about what happens or does not happen with that decision that was made. And furthermore, two very different profiles. In the case of Paula, her hotels in Argentina versus the US, all under management, and in Herman's case, all under franchise. Yes? So we have that situation here. I would like to start with you, Paula. Almost 20 years, or is it 20 years already? It is so. We inaugurated the Hilton in Puerto Madero, in Buenos Aires, Argentina, in the year 2000. So it's 22 years, actually. And with a very beautiful time, very successul until the pandemic. And well, over these 2 years have been difficult, very difficult. We had to, like everyone else, we had to live through what came at us. And well, I believe we did so with a great deal of attitude. And we got ahead. We never closed down the hotel, not even a single day. It was a decision that we made on our own, because in reality we did not have an input from the chain saying you have to close, you have to stay open. No, it was a decision made by my family and myself on March the 18th of 2020. I remember sitting in the lobby with the manager, who joined us very closely in that decision. And I saw that the last crew was coming in, and we did not have many. But at that time, we were getting the crews from Air France, and George, the manager, told me no more crews will come in because, well, the airports, well, he was telling me about something that he knew, but that I knew, but we were talking about it. We were talking about how we would go on. And well, my decision at that time was, I don't want to shut down the hotel because I did not imagine such a huge property to be closed. We didn't know whether it would be 2 months, 3 years. Nobody knew. And so I said, I cannot shut this down. I will stay here. George said, I will stay here with you. And there at that time, At the end of March, we made the decision of putting together an 8-person team, among which Josh and I were in that group, that we would stay at the hotel and, well, the guests started leaving, and we only had 2 rooms that stayed in for a couple of months, perhaps 2 months, a Spanish couple and a Mexican businessman who had to stay because of the circumstances. And so, well, that is how we started with the pandemic, with a great deal of effort. But we got through it, and I would like to share with you that today we have a growth in our rate from those days and up to now of 55%, something that is very important. At that time, as I said, we had a very low occupancy rate with a ridiculous rate, and today we have 72% of average occupancy with a very interesting 72, yes. I have to tell you something, that is the envy. Your increase is generating envy from a large part of the business in the region. It is true that there are some hotspots around the region, Mexico and some others, but to hear 72%, what kind of a decision in that crisis? And with all respect, it was a double pandemic that we had in Argentina. Some people will only see 2, but we saw 5. Well, I mean, not closing and then adapting in order to continue, because those enormous properties, I mean, keeping them alive, they demand a lot. Yes, but what happened to me was that I did not imagine how that hotel would look closed down and how difficult it would be to reopen it, the elevators, the air conditioning. In as much as you do maintenance, the use is indeed important. So, well, we decided that and we pushed it forth. Well, and you know, I would say that one of the main exceptions, well, some properties, some earlier, some later, wound up closing down, and some dramatically have not reopened. And then to make the decision to reopen, it is not, as you say, well, you know, you open the doors and we turn on the lights and we clean up a little. No, it is a huge effort with additional capital and resources. It is not easy. What has been the case? Well, our case was different. We have 9 properties in Panama. And as you heard last night, my dad, he went straight into COVID, and he went straight into an ICU, into a coma. So the COVID thing was very personal for us as a family. And at the time of shutting down the airports with 9 hotels, we thought of keeping 1 open, and there was no way. And then we decided, as a family, we decided to donate. So we donated 1 hotel as a hospital. It was the Crown Plaza in Panama. It was very personal for us to have my dad dying in the hospital, COVID, and knowing that the Panamanian government had no idea as to what to do at that time. So we started off by donating a hotel as a hospital hotel. Then we donated another hotel for nurses and doctors. And it was precisely the doctors who were taking care of my dad. So of course, that was extended. Those first weeks of March, for those of us who remember, we were totally disoriented. We did not know what to do. The government did not know what to do. And COVID was an enormous plague, and very important. If someone was dealing with someone who had COVID, that person had to be isolated as well. And so we made the decision of, you know what, a hotel being closed down, it's painful. We would rather donating it. So that is what we did with 2 of the properties. And then the government did rent off 3 more properties for quarantine. In our case, we quarantined some healthy people, key persons like the National Police, for instance. the Panamanian government had the policemen coming back to hotels, not to their communities, in order to prevent more exposure or to spreading. So that was one of our first experiences with the COVID. And of course, later on, we little by little saw the openings, the correct market. We took one hotel. We wanted to consolidate everything to one hotel, rotate the personnel so that everybody would get a little bit of something. We have over 1,700 collaborators at the beginning of the pandemic, and probably the most painful thing was not only to close the property physically, but telling 1,700 people, what are they going to do? At the beginning it was 1 week, then it turned into 2 weeks, then it was 3 months. And our collaborators, I mean, literally, they had nothing to eat. We had nothing to give them. Of course, we gave them all of the food that we had in the storage, and we only had the security personnel, and amongst themselves, the security personnel would use their turn so that some waiter might come work as a guard. And we tried to spread what little we had with the collaborators, and I believe that was the most painful part, because there were no alternatives. Over those first few months, it was moving around was forbidden. They could not go out looking for a job even. So we tried to look at that balance to see how we could contribute to the community and to be solidary to the people with COVID, to the national government, to the collaborators, to see how we could, within the best terms possible, instead of having these beautiful assets in disuse, being solidary. And I believe that was a very traumatic moment for everyone. In my particular case, and for my family, well, my dad dying literally, thank God he's still here. And well, so that was the manner in which we started at the beginning of the pandemic. Yes, okay, I'm imagining beyond the different positions about managing a franchise, that responsibility that one has towards a human group, which has turned out to be so fundamental. In the case of hotels, you might have marvelous properties, and it is very important, but you cannot give up the final product unless you have a team of people. So it is important to have an investment in infrastructure, but the investment that you have in human capital is just as important. And well, in your case, to lead it so closely, because all of the responsibilities were yours. In the case of Paula, well, you had the support. You were very close to the general manager, in spite of seeing that it was an operation. Yes. Okay, that, like, well, has happened to the whole industry. It brings about an economic and financial situation that is quite complex. So how have you carried this situation? How have you lived it? Because evidently, as successful as you might have been, the business at one time, yes, okay, one says, well, 1 week, 3 weeks, 5 months, I don't know. This turned out to be long. It was very long. It still is. It's still dragging on. So how did you face it? I mean, because there are other decisions to be made when you don't have any resources in the tiller. Well, we did not have resources from the business at that time, meaning we sought, we were getting from our bags and bring it to Argentina. That's what we did, and we had some small help from the government to pay part of the salaries of the 400 employees that we have at the hotel. Today we have some less because we did make a personnel reduction. We called to see who wanted to leave at that time. We had some good reception from the employees. Furthermore, because they were people who basically, well, they preferred at that time, they decided to receive some amount of money, which turned out to be important in some cases, and they freed us of some 40 people. Today we still have a staff with 360 employees. Oh, well, it's still big. Yes, yes, it is.
Para una propiedad de
For
más
a
de 400
property of a
400
little more than 400. It's 417 rooms.
60.000 metros cuadrados tiene el hotel.
60,000 square meters in the convention center. That's the area of the hotel. And the project as a whole, 200,000 meters in Puerto Madero. Is leveraging very common in Argentina, meaning when you're carrying out a project, it's just, but I mean, when it comes to moments like this, you are relieved from the pressure. So how has it been? I'm asking the question myself still. It was really hard. It was very complicated. Fortunately, we were, at the time, we were stable, financially speaking. We had some cash flow. We had many expenses, so we had to be very creative. At that point, our collaborators lived up to the best attitude. Those little business lines that emerged, deliveries and so forth, became a main approach. So we opened the pool for day pass and things like this. And those were brainstorming initiatives by the employees. They came up with these ideas. So we discussed these ideas with the financial managers and so forth. We started doing these little things. We would do some like greenhouses or some farms. So and we would literally count the cents. We received $400 today. Let's allocate them, and so that's what we did. It was really difficult given the size of this hotel and all the hotels we have. So we had to be really creative, and there are many things that we did. So many and other things we refrained from doing. We had to ask for help to banks and other banks and so forth. But the challenge is fresh money. Back then it was all about cash flow, how to keep the cash flow. And no one knew how long this pandemic would last or this situation would last. Yes, and being able to keep our collaborators and help them. And we had to negotiate with the vendors, with the utility providers and so forth. So in a different situation, well, in addition to those collaborators, the employees and the aid provided by the banks, you also had some other partners. And an important partner, meaning your important partners. How were your relationships like that? The truth is that the decision of not closing the hotel, I made it myself. But Hilton provided standards in order to keep the hotel open. So the standard meaning the sanitization, the plastic bags, the little plastic bags. We took that from Hilton. And afterwards, there wasn't much more to it. I think that to all of us, it was such a huge surprise. This pandemic was such a huge surprise that both Hilton and us took measures as time went by. And that was what we took from the chain. Well, our experience, specifically, I can speak on behalf of IHTG and Marriott Resorts. They were very good to us. There was a point in which they were also undergoing these hardships. If I'm not paying you my fees, and it's because I'm not receiving any type of income, so we would cry together. But those brands were really good to us. It was very important to implement this sanitation measures to understand the travelers' needs, but it was very hard because there were no travelers. So just being there, calling them How can I help you? Holding webinars and certain this initiative. So I'm really pleased with these 3 brands I work with and the support they gave me. Of course, I would love to have some other type of financial aid, but that's out of their reach. And it was not expected. I think they suffered as much as we did. They have a broader portfolio with more countries, but I'm really happy with the partners I have. Yeah, because especially in this peak season or the peak time of the crisis, one would hear that without considering what you're mentioning, all the players in the industry were struck with this. So there's a certain role. I am the affected party, but it impacted the whole industry, the big, the medium-sized, and the small players, and the different roles thereby. So when it comes to recovering ourselves, we notice that having a good brand implies a more rapid recovery than as opposed to the case of the brands that did not have a rapid recovery. Now, in the recovery, we are monitoring the recovery of different hotels, and there's definitely a good brand, a brand that provided support. If it's a brand that provided support, that brand will have a competitive advantage as compared to the competitor. A few years ago, when these meetings began, we had a press conference with the CEOs of the big groups. And I remember a few years before the pandemic, one of the journalists, I was moderating that press conference, and one of the journalists was saying, "You, with a brand or without a brand? What do you think? With or without a brand?" He was asking me. And that is a question that needs to be addressed, but we need to think about the answer. I think that the most important thing is having the best relationship possible with a brand. But brands add a value, and I believe the pandemic made it evident that beyond the moments of crisis, that value they added made a difference, not only because of the distribution channel, but because of all the series of things around it. Safety, because nowadays travelers want to feel safe, not only for hygiene reasons or health issues, but it's a time of crisis. If you're locked down in a certain country, I'd rather stay at the Westin than in just a random hotel. That's my opinion. And I think this is something that travelers prefer. They want to feel safe. They want to know they're taken care of, because this brand delivers a promise internationally. So that's where the benefit lies. And that's what we will notice in the next few years. There are 2 different models. Managing franchise, I don't know, in your case, 20 years ago, it used to be something else. It was a different story. Everything was different. Not only from the standpoint of the business group, but the industry as a whole failed to offer many alternatives. There wasn't much know-how there. So what's your view after 20 years? Well, regarding the brands, I think the question whether with or without a brand, I think it's with a brand. It was very positive for us to have a brand like ours. It was really helpful. Can you repeat your question? Oh, yeah, back then, 20, 25 years ago, there was, without hesitation, management was the only alternative. But today, after the pandemic, I think we can see we are keen about the other possibility, which is the one you use, the franchise. I personally like having more incidents and the destination, what's going to happen with the cash flow. So we are close to renewing the contract.
estamos viendo con Buenos,
And
con el tema
therefore,
del franchise.
this is, we are looking forward to franchising. Okay. Well, in our case, we had a first experience with the Dreams Playa Bonita with managing the hotel, and we managed the other hotels, the other 8 hotels. And yes, at the end of the day, it's about who does the job better. Yes, franchising does help a lot in terms of economies of scale. Since we're big, we have managed to achieve economies of scale that are interesting for a person who is about to open a small hotel. If you're very small, or you're 100, either you're devoted 100%, or hand over the management to someone who has economies of scale and can provide a benefit. Because it's not a clear response. There are moments where the budget. Well, I want to be involved in budgetary issues, for instance. Sometimes I wouldn't want to be involved at all. So the two options are valid. But at the end of the day, I think it's all about performance, financial performance. Who does it better? And we shouldn't believe that we are the only ones to do the best job. At the end of the day, there are metrics, and we will be able to measure the outcome and just consider all those alternatives.
Paula, besides, well, I mean, a few years back, but not like 20, you did try some investment in the U.S. and precisely in a market which is today, it is hot as it can be. It is super hot, yes. I mean, you've seen it at another time, but today you're standing in one of those markets that everybody would like to. Yes, it's absolutely great. This morning I was getting the numbers from the hotels in Miami, and the truth is that they are super happy, filled with joy. Yes, being an owner, no doubt. Being a guest, I tell you, it's incredible. I mean, everything. They have exploded. The value of property has exploded, has boomed in a manner that there is no, I mean, the offer is not enough to satisfy the demand. And well, the hotels are doing incredibly well. Paula had some vision of investing in South Beach. Yes, that is correct. I have 4 hotels with different, well, none of these large brands, in which, well, we do have a great performance with regards to occupancy, rates, incredible. Furthermore, incredibly, how South Beach is growing its rates. So, as of 2008, when I got into the first hotel in Miami, and well, I kept growing, and thus far, I'm happy to have done so, and if I may, I shall continue to increase the portfolio of hotels, and that is also with management. Yes, that is correct. Yes, with small local companies for management. At this time, we have taken a company from outside, from Spain, that is building its first experience in South Beach, and we're doing great. And what is this about TSH? TSH. Think Smart Hospitality. Yes, the managing company that we put together with Osvaldo Boimorto, who is a great friend and collaborator of mine, and Mariano Diez. It is a manager company for the region, and we also started with a great deal of success, fortunately. I think that the pandemic helped us be able to drive this, because we started with small hotels in which we are changing brands. And well, investors are quite dependent of our managing company at this time. We started in Argentina. Okay, so you changed from that position of arriving in an industry where you did not have a presence. The group was a creative, successful entrepreneur. He was from TV. Oh, yes, in television, basically. Paula's dad, a visionary like no other, who started very early on. He took off, yes, he left us with a great deal of work, but yes, well. And furthermore, he made you live through a passion, because I know that you in the industry, yes, it became a passion for me, the hotel industry, hospitality. I am very involved in the development of these hotels in Miami, and well, the truth is that I believe that it's very important our eyes, our presence every day in the management of the hotel. All right, in closing, how do you see the future for these hotels, the future of this industry beyond your hotels in your markets? I believe that we've already been discussing that a little bit during today's meeting, and the truth is that we all agree that markets will change. We have to accept that. We know that for those of us who have city hotels, those of us who are used to corporate traveler, that corporate travel will change. Zoom is here to stay, and the faster we accept and adapt to new realities, the better we will do. We also hope that there will be more smaller meetings, because once you have a lot of people working remotely, there will also be smaller meetings in very fun places. We've been talking about a little bit about design, different things, and why not? If one works in Buenos Aires, the other one in Texas, why not meet in Panama? So we have a great deal of potential for smaller meetings that will have a more interesting leisure component. I mean, if we come here, we won't come here to get bored. We will come do something interesting. So I do believe that will change. Every market will change, and that is what will probably be reduced, and we have been talking about that. Leisure will increase. People want to travel, people want to be outdoors. There will be many more open-air meetings, many more fun meetings, smaller work teams, smaller families, and it's very, very enthusiastic. I'm very cheerful about, but we cannot continue with the old formula that we had over the last 10, 15 years. We need a new formula. Paula, what about you? Me, I am quite confident. As a matter of fact, I see that we are recovering, and I am very confident that it will recover and grow. In my hotel, which is a business hotel, it's a little bit more complicated. I also believe that Zoom is here to stay, but the business people, as I heard in one of the panels yesterday, we like to travel, we like conventions in all environments, not only in hotel. So I believe that one way will come back. I am seeing it in my hotel slowly. We do have some social events and some work. Some small conventions are coming back. But I am so sure that this will recover, that we, for instance, when we started our project in Puerto Madero, in Buenos Aires, we had the hotel with 417 rooms, plus 6,000 meters for conventions, and we had a building that was there 22 years ago. It was earmarked to become an apart hotel. And back then in 2001, the crisis in Argentina was horrible. We repurposed it into a office building, and today we're really thinking of building 200 more rooms in that building, with which we believe it will take new life, and we're betting on it. That's great to hear. I have a final question, but you know what? Before that, if you allow me, I believe that there is no doubt that Zoom is here to stay and that we need to rethink ourselves. And I think that we have learned many things during the pandemic. One, to use technology, and Zoom is, of course, one of those. And another that we also learned is that Zoom is not enough. It is not enough, no. And furthermore, there's a future that's coming out. Let's see how this metaverse universe comes. So, well, those are the challenges of life. And one of the things that makes it so marvelous. Well, one last message from each one. Just imagine we have a number of colleagues of yours, successful businessmen, in other lines of business. But they have come here because they would like to hear, to see what's going on. What would you tell today someone who is looking at this industry? Start off, kick it off, because it is a fascinating industry. It's quite beautiful to work in a hotel with people who come because of work and because of tourism. Because in general, those who come for tourism are persons who are happy at that time. I mean, I love working with happy people and for happy people. So I am here to support anyone who may wish to get started on this topic of tourism and hospitality. Herman? Well, I think that those who are looking into investing into tourism, they should invest right now, because one of the things that are coming, and it's real, I mean, we're about to be hit by an inflation. And the best thing to do with your money right now is to invest it in a real estate property, which can be interesting, like a hotel. Obviously, you have to study it carefully. Let us not just because everybody's in one market, I'm going to jump into. No. Panama did that. Panama City did that because all of the brands were here, all of the brands came in, and then it became a disaster. You have to be a little unique. Let's be creative. Let's look into new things, but do invest. Panama has some fantastic places. Minister was explaining yesterday, beautiful beaches where you would be alone. You would be your only competitor. People are trying to get out. People want to go beyond what was conventional. So invest now. Very good. Ladies and gentlemen, please join me in expressing our gratitude for these kind guests for today. Thank you.